everyone, I'm Courtney, and this is a follow-up video to the one that I did explaining the role of white women in American social systems using a little Lego house. So if you haven't seen that one, go watch that first. Otherwise, these action steps and the way that I explain them might not make so much sense. But otherwise, we're going to dive right in. I'm going to try to give you a list of really practical ways that you can contribute to positive social change and stop being complicit in the oppression of Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, and other minorities. So if you remember, based on the other video, our social system kind of looks like this, right? You have the people with all the power, which is typically white men that are upper to middle class, cisgendered, heterosexual. And down here, we have white women in this interesting place of experiencing some oppression, but also being complicit in that oppression to minorities and people of color down here. So the first thing that we need to do to start dismantling this so we can build it back better is we need to stop. We need to stop oppressing, being complicit with this oppression. So there's a couple ways that we can do this. I'm going to run through them very quickly. You'll find more information and links and recommendations and resources in the caption. So number one, you need to listen and learn about how this happens, because most of us don't understand how we are complicit with this oppression, and it's really hard to stop doing something that you don't know that you're doing, if that makes sense. So the first thing we need to do is learn about how it works so that we can stop. So listen to Black and brown leaders on social media. Don't send them direct messages and ask them to educate you. They've already done that work. Just look at what they've written and the videos that they've made previously. Watch TED Talks. Listen to podcasts, watch documentaries. There are lists and lists and lists, dozens of them, with resources for how you can educate yourself. So that's number one. Number two is talk to your children about race, if you have them, particularly white people. Not enough of us are talking to our kids about race, and we must. It will be uncomfortable, but you will survive, I promise. There are so many resources out there to help you do this well. Books and podcasts and family-friendly documentaries and things like that you can watch. Again, Google it and they will come up. It's very important to end this in this generation, or at least make progress and set them up for more success than the previous generations have. Number three, I want you to be very aware of the power that white women have in our communities, particularly with law enforcement. So number three is, please don't call the cops on people of color unless you absolutely have to. If you see a crime actively being committed, fine, call the cops. But if it's something small and you feel suspicious, look inside and ask yourself why you feel suspicious instead of calling the cops on that person, because with the way that law enforcement systems are set up, white women are the most protected group. And by calling the cops on people of color, we can put them at huge risk for violence and aggression and injustice. So please don't call the cops unless you need to. Just be very aware of how that system works. Number four, if you're in a position of power at your company or organization, please hire more people of color and intentionally address the systems of racism that are present in the hiring process in America as it currently is. That's been proven over and over and over again. So talk to your HR department and make sure that you are doing everything that you can to remove the systemic racism out of your hiring process. Again, there are tons of resources online for how to do that. Number four, donate to reparations funds. Because of our long history of systemic racism in this country, there is a giant gap between white family wealth and Black family wealth. The last number I saw said that Black families typically have 1/13 the amount of family generational wealth that white families have, and that's because of the GI Bill after World War II that set white veterans up with stipends but didn't give it to Black soldiers, to Black veterans. Redlining, a lack of access to advanced education, things like that. All of this led up to white families being able to build equity when Black families weren't able to. That being said, there are great reparations funds that you can donate to that are trying to close that gap. I've linked to a good one down below. But also on an individual level, please pay the Black leaders and brown leaders and Indigenous people that you are learning from, and the minority leaders that you're learning from. Most of them have Patreon links and GoFundMes and PayPal information in their bios. They've done a lot of work and are doing a lot of work to help educate us, and they should be paid for their effort. So I'd highly encourage you to go make reparations on an individual level by paying those people for their work. And then finally here, vote. Please vote, especially in your local elections. Vote in people of color and Black leaders because they know what they need more than we do, obviously. And they have a better understanding of how this system works. So their voices are really important and powerful, and they're currently missing in a lot of places. Also, listen to the voices of the majority consensus of what minority groups are saying they need in order to reach justice and achieve equality in the US. They know what they need, and we need to believe them, and vote for the policies that the majority of them are asking for, even if it doesn't benefit us, even if it costs us tax dollars, even if it costs us position of power. We need to vote more altruistically and vote on behalf of our brothers and sisters of color. And that's a huge thing that we can do. And then on the second step to this approach, we've got a bottom up, middle out, top down, multi-directional approach going on this because the system's too big and broken for just a single approach. So number 2 is recruit. And what I mean by this is recruit your white friends into this movement. Talk to your friends about race. Talk to your girlfriends about race over cocktails. It will be awkward. You will be okay. The discomfort of having these conversations is far less than the pain and violence experienced by our Black and brown brothers and sisters due to the injustice of our society. So take the discomfort so they can stay alive. So talk to your girlfriends over cocktails. Talk to your friends at the playground. Talk to your friends at work. Like, have these conversations with your white friends, and do your best to not burn those bridges, to not speak to them in such a way that they feel alienated from you. I personally don't believe that white people have the luxury of alienating each other in this time. This is our problem that we created, and we need to talk to our people about it. And we need to do it in a way that's productive. So white people, please do not alienate other white people in this conversation. Do your best. Oh, number 2. Okay, number 3, dismantle. Okay, so there's some big picture things that we also need to do. Number 1, we need to speak up when we see stuff going down. If we see anything racist or discriminatory or anything oppressive that we see happening at our work, at our school, in our social groups, we need to speak up about it. I don't know if you guys saw the Anthropology story about these white employees are coming out about this really racist policy that Anthropology, the store, has had, where they required they had a code word for Black people and asked their employees to follow the Black shoppers around the store to make sure they didn't steal anything. And Black people have told us that this has been happening for years and decades, and no one has done anything about it, right? And so that is how those white girls, those white employees became complicit in that violence, right? What they should have done instead is they should have refused to be a part of it. They should have gotten together as a whole and taken it to corporate and said, this is not okay, you need to stop this. And if they didn't listen, they could have made it public, which they've now done, but years too late. So number 1 here is to speak up. When you say something, when you see something, you need to say something. Now, if there's a person of color in the room, don't steamroll them and take over the conversation. That's not necessary. But if there is not a person of color in the room, you must speak up. It will be hard. You will probably feel very nervous. It will feel scary. That's okay. Be brave. You can do it. With that, we need to ask hard questions of the people around us and the institutions around us. So ask your kid's school about the achievement gap between students of color and white students. Make an appointment with the principal and ask about that. Also ask about disciplinary gaps between students of color and white students. What are the percentages there? Talk to your university about their diversity and inclusion policies. What are they doing to ensure diversity? Talk to your company about their HR practices. What are they doing to ensure that there's not a gap in pay between their employees of color and their white employees? Ask these hard questions. It will be scary. Do it anyway. It will make a huge difference because white women have access to these institutions in ways that our minority friends do not have. So we need to use that access to ask the hard questions and force the change. It will feel like you're overstepping a social boundary because you are. That social boundary is what keeps us complicit because we know that that social boundary is there. We don't ask about these things and then it doesn't affect us, right? But by respecting those boundaries, that makes us complicit. So, and then with that too, last thing here is funnel your money towards companies that are Black owned or owned by minorities. And this is very important. I cannot overstate the power of how you use your money. A white upper middle class and middle class women in North America are the most powerful consumer bloc in the world. We shape the world with our money. Be intentional with how you spend it. Jeff Bezos doesn't need any more of it. Target doesn't need any more of it. But we can use our money to help close the social inequality gap by spending it in ways that are meaningful. So be very clear about where your money is going and create the kind of world that you want to see. And then again, vote federally as well as locally. It's very important that you vote in the way that the majority of our Black, Brown, Indigenous, and minority community members, neighbors, friends, brothers, and sisters are asking us to vote. So I think that sums it up. That was a lot. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any more that I can. And if I can help you figure out what you can do to make a difference, please let me know. I'm happy to help. All right. Thanks, everyone.